Hey everyone! Alright, it's a new patch, and that does of course mean it's time for a gearing guide. Now, I would ramble on about prepping for the patch and all sorts of side talk, but honestly this patch has got an obscene amount of stuff to discuss where gearing is concerned, so we're just going to dive straight into things today. Now, this video guide is structured into two major segments. First, an explainer of this patch's gear, so you understand what we're dealing with, and then the actual guide bit, which we'll be talking about, well, a different form this time, a bit more actionable for you. We very much hope it proves helpful. Let's go. Let's break it down first. Where do you get gear in patch 9.1? Well, your big new source of gear is Korthia and the Maw. In essence, they have a new and mostly improved iteration of the benthic gearing system from the Nazjatar zone of patch 8.2. So this gear drops in the zone, it can be upgraded with currency, and you can send some of it to your alt characters. But it does not have randomly rolling gem slots or effects that are absurdly strong, so it's nice and balanced. There's also a major currency that you will need for this. Catalogued research. You get this from turning in relic fragments, and you get the relic fragments from rares, treasures, and events. Now in Korthia, you will get some item level 200 gear from some of the dailies that you do. You'll get it from the twice a week Covenant assaults, and then from your weeklies, which are the Tormentors of Torghast event, the old Wrath of the Jailer event, and the new Korthia Fill the Bar meta quest. For alts, you can also purchase bind on account tokens for 1,000 Stygia each, but they do roll a random slot. Unlike the benthic gear, Blizz, it was so close to being perfect. Now as a bonus here, you also have a low chance to get either direct gear or those bind on account tokens from killing rare mobs. Also, the new world boss in the Maw can drop eye level 233 gear, including a main stat trinket. Now, the gear overall in the Maw and Korthia starts at item level 200 right away, and depending on your Korthia research rank, which is the stuff that comes from those relic fragments, and of course your Covenant renown level, you'll be able to upgrade that gear in stages all the way up to item level 233, and that's with catalogued research, that currency. Although that item level for the upgrades is capped at 220 for at least a few weeks. Then, to add a little bit extra to this, after you hit a certain stage of renown, that item level 200 gear will actually start to drop for you, already being upgraded a bit. We'll have a full overview of the Korthia stuff up in a few days for complete details, because there's a lot, but that's your TLDR. So, how is this relevant to gearing, you might wonder? Well, it's essentially catch up with currency-gated upgrades. Now, our recommendation to you is that you get as much of the item level 200 gear as you can, and then hold on to your catalogued research for a while. Once you've done other bits of content in the game, you'll know which unlucky slot you can then use that currency to, get an upgrade for. Okay, let's move on to the next bit. Tazavesh is a mega dungeon offering eye level 226 gear. It also has an optional hard mode for each boss, and those drop item level 233 gear. Now this is equivalent to the new raid's normal gear, with the hard mode of Tazavesh dropping gear that's between normal and heroic for the new raid. There are 8 bosses, and every slot and type of gear is available in the instance, so in essence, you could fully gear in item level 226 or 233 gear from just running Tazavesh every week. So overall, Tazavesh will be relevant content to you until your whole character is above either eye level 226 or 233. Crafted gear then. In patch 9.1, Crafter's Marks will allow crafters to make gear at both item level 200 and 230. Now, the 230 gear is limited to one slot only. It's a unique equip effect. But you can, because of this, throw on as much eye level 200 gear as you'd like. Great for getting alts up to speed quick. This gear might take a bit of time to hit the auction house though, because these new crafter marks, they do require reputation and research to buy. Now after about a week or so though, buying a full eye level 200 set should be possible, although the 230 bits may come in later, might just depend on how hard people grind Korthia. Mythic Plus is largely the same as in patch 9.0.5, with the exception that the seasonal Valor cap starts fresh. That means it will start at 750, and it will grow by 750 weekly throughout Season 2 of Shadowlands. The base item level of Mythic 0 dungeons this time is eye level 210, and the entire upgrade system is in, from the beginning. But that actually means you could make a big mistake, so listen carefully. As always here, spending Valor points on your early Mythic drops at low keystone levels, that really is a waste, because you might as well just get some progression and get the same item level at a higher starting point, and then upgrade it from there. You want to avoid that trap because your total Valor points are limited, and if you waste them in low item level drops at the start of the season, well, you could be doing yourself in a bit. Now, since it's item level 210, doing a world tour of Mythic Zeros at the start of this patch, well, that could be a great way to improve on any Korthia gear or perhaps fill in any unlucky slots. For Mythic Plus, of course, just get big gear ASAP and then target your BIS, farm up some Valor. Do, of course, remember that the Valor point upgrades are now locked behind your Mythic Plus score, rather than the old Keystone achievements. But in all honesty there, not that much will change. Of course, if you're feeling nice and generous, remember you can get bonus Valor from helping other people increase their Mythic Plus score, which is a lovely touch. PvP, like with Mythic Plus, is largely untouched for gearing, but there is one major change. PvP gear now increases in item level drastically when you enter PvP combat, at the expense of it being a bit weaker outside of PvP. And that means that PvP gear is almost always the best possible gear for you to have in PvP. As it should be, of course. There could be a caveat later. We'll have a few tables of gear on the screen now that will show you the relevant item levels. Unrated gear ranges from 177 to 216, which will act as 190 and 229 in PvP content. Rated gear should look something like this, ranging from 220 to 246, which of course will be 233 to 259 in PvP. That leaves it 7 item levels above most Mythic Sanctum of Domination loot. Now, as per before, you will have your 2 weeklies for Honor and Conquest, your weekly Brawl quest, farmable Honor points, and then of course your season-capped Conquest. Sadly though, as we'll cover next, if you're a real high-end PvPer, you will need to also be a Mythic Raider if you want to be completely optimal in terms of your gear. For most though, this system does just work. Raid gearing is mostly the same as usual, with normal mode starting at 226 this time round. The big difference though is the addition of domination sockets and gems. So for every armor type, helms, shoulders, and chests from this raid will have special sockets. Other armor types have 2 specific slots with sockets. They're on the screen for you now. Avoid crafting legendaries on any 5 of these slots, because these domination gems are very important to your character. There are too many domination gems to list here, so we'll just run through them on the screen while we have a chat here. Now, the gems themselves are purchasable and upgradable in Korthia, with Stygian Embers, which is a currency that you get from your weekly boss kills in the new raid, as well as the weekly Korthia Fill the Bar quest. Now, these will upgrade to rank 5 over time, and you can remove them from your armor with an item from one of the vendors in Korthia. There are also powerful set bonuses for having 3 of the same color of gem, so you'll want to target specific items from the raid and then specific gems to upgrade. Now, this set bonus is only active in Torghast, the Maw, Korthia, and the raid, but the gems themselves are active everywhere. And with their current power level on the release candidate, that does actually mean that high-end Mythic Plus players and PvPers will very much want to do the raid to get those gems so they can be the very best. Oh, and you can buy some item level 226 Domination socket gear from Korthia with the currency there. Then, since we're talking about gear, I think we might as well give this a special mention. The Sanctum of Domination loot is quite cool. As an example, Sylvanas drops a legendary bow that gives hunters a new ability, which is cool already, but there's actually so much more. The Edge of Night dagger is the one that she fought Saurfang with. There's a quiver piece that gives hunters an AoE proc, and more. Backstab daggers, a sword that eats other weapons to power up, and a whole ton of interesting trinkets, including, it appears, Saurfang's soul. You can just equip it. The last thing for raid gear then is bind and equip gear. BOEs are in the raid, but they should be very expensive in the auction house this time round because there's only 2 slots for each armor type this time. There's no jewelry, and they will drop at a lower rate than they did from Castle Nathria. As for Legendaries then, there are 2 new ranks appearing in this patch, rank 5 and rank 6. Upgrading to these ranks will cost you Soul Cinders, which basically are the new Soul Ash. Now, you can get Soul Cinders from the new Torghast difficulties, weekly Korthia content, and sometimes from your adventure table. Now, there's also new legendary powers from your Covenant Renown progress. These powers are specific to each Covenant for each class, and there are some changes to Soul Ash. Torghast now drops a bunch more of it. It drops some Soul Ash for repeated runs in the same week, and you can exchange 300 Soul Ash for a Bind on Account box of 250. So, with a bit of a tax rate, you can send Soul Ash to your alts. Now, the last neat part here is that you might need to recraft your 9.0 Legendaries. If you, as I being a hunter did, made your 9.0 Legendaries on the slots of the helm, the shoulders, the chest, or the other 2 Domination socket slots for your armor type, yeah, then you're going to need to remake that slot. You'll need to remake your Legendary, but on a slot that does not conflict with the new Domination shard and socket gearing system. There's a slight chance this could include your neck, because the Tazavesh neck piece that we mentioned earlier could be extremely powerful. And this does mean that that Soul Ash and that gold that you spent in patch 9.0 may as well go in the bin, because there's no way to refund it or anything like that. That's just how the dice fell with this patch. I guess at least Soul Ash is a bit easier to come by, but yeah, there's no denying this bit's a bit of a shit deal. As for Conduits then, all existing Conduits can be upgraded in one of 3 ways. Drops from the Sanctum of Domination, drops from Tazavesh, and random upgrade items from Korthia. Now, the end goal will of course be Korthia, because the items that you buy with research, they scale all the way up to 252. Whereas whatever conduit drops you get from the content that you're doing, of course, those are limited to the difficulty of the content that you're doing. Now, there are 2 new conduits available in patch 9.1. They are available from the new world boss and from the Korthia weekly quest, specifically the Death's Advanced chest. If your conduits are very well behind, I guess sort of don't worry. Your time in Korthia should drop you plenty of 226 conduit upgrade items. I hope plenty. Mine are very behind. I think the system feels awful, but there you go. You're kind of regrinding the thing you already had, but slightly higher item level, so that's happening again. And finally, although I'm sure you've not forgotten this, the Great Vault, do make sure that you, of course, get 1 slot, filled each week on that so that you can roll in some gear. Alternatively, there is the ability to get Anima or Stygia because they have upgraded the sort of backup choice from the Great Vault, which is a good move of them. So that's it for the new gear in the patch. That is pretty much everything you need to know to get a broad understanding of how it works. And with all of this info bouncing around your brain, let's get on to the actual guide part. What should you be doing? Well, we've been talking about the best way to format a guide given how complicated this is and how varied people's playstyles could be. Do you know what? The game is structured via repeatable weekly and daily activities, so we're just going to follow suit. Here are a few checklists for you. Pick the one that suits you, and off you go. This one is for anyone who's engaging with the gearing loop of this expansion at all. Maybe you're not in a rush to get this season's achievements, or maybe you just, don't have the time to put hours and hours each week into the game. Well, this stuff is basically the sort of highly efficient way to prioritize your playtime. The rest can wait. Weekly, you'll want to do the following in Korthia and the Maw at a minimum. The Shaping Fate quest in Korthia, the Tormentors of Torghast, and both of the Covenant Assaults in the Maw. These are going to give you research and soul cinders, as well as Korthia gear and possibly conduits. Of course, if the New World boss is up, it can drop eye-level 233 gear and conduits. Optionally, you can also do the Wrath of the Jailer for Korthia gear and Stygia. When it comes to dungeons, Tazavesh Weekly will be relevant until you outgear its hard mode at 233. Make sure to do at least one Mythic Plus dungeon at a high difficulty level for the Great Vault slot. As for raiding then, make sure you kill at least one boss for the Great Vault slot, and of course try to kill as many as you can for Stygian Embers, which will be used to upgrade your Domination gems. Over in PvP, the best thing to do on a limited time budget is to prioritize the PvP quests in Oribos, as they give plenty of conquest and honor. And also, do not forget about Torghast. You will need to run both wings for at least 4 weeks, as well as the above Maw stuff, in order, of course, to get your rank 6 legendary. Honestly, there's not a lot else to add to this type of player's checklist. If you've got a lot more time, most of the valuable weeklies are actually too important to skip, so you're kind of just left with the rest of the game after you've done those things. Now, doing what we've got here will ensure that you can get sockets, Korthia upgrades, and your chosen avenue of gear ASAP. And this boils down to adding dailies into your gameplay. Of course, between the Korthia dailies, the rares, the treasures, and the events that are in Korthia and the Maw. And then, of course, doing your Covenant callings. If you still need those conduits or some entry-level gear, that's a bunch of your world content extra homework. For dungeons in the raid, of course, it just means doing at least enough to add some more choice to your Great Vault and to earn more currency, be that Valor or Stygian Embers. For PvP, obviously just try to climb rating a bit, right? Get some extra daily wins for Honor and Conquest. It's not too complicated. You can also then try to keep up more and more with your adventure table, because that will give you more Soul Ash and Soul Cinders, which could be handy, and you can do that on your phone outside of your World of Warcraft gameplay time. Well, if you've got nothing else going on but hours and hours of World of Warcraft, then nice one, because this is where things get simple. Hit up Korthia and clear as much of the damn thing as is physically possible. You're going to be going giga into it. That will net you loads of research, and that research you can turn into conduit upgrades and sockets. As for the raid, make sure you clear the hardest difficulty that you can every week, of course, and then next turn your attention to Mythic Plus and PvP and just grind your heart out. That said, there are some tips to remember that will be hyper useful for all gameplay styles. And now, there are obviously optimizations to make that aren't just us telling you things to do. So here are some things for you to think about while you're playing the game. Just little things to make your playtime be used a little bit better. So, for Korthia, do weeklies, then do dailies, and then install the Handy Notes add-on. And using that, you can easily target rares, treasures, and events. Of course, feel free to have an old-fashioned explore for a while if you want to explore that mystery yourself, but the whole grind does become a whole lot quicker if you're able to laser focus on the things that you need, and Handy Notes is awesome for that. The developer does an incredible job for the WoW community. Next, make sure to get all of your conduits to item level 226 via the items that drop in Korthia. Do that before you spend your research on the new item level 252 upgrade tokens. Because if that 252 upgrade token activates itself on an item level 200 socket, I mean, it's a total waste when you could have just used an item level 226 one on that socket. So do that. Next, do not upgrade any Korthia pieces unless you aren't going to be doing any other content in the game, because that research is better used on conduits and sockets. Those gear upgrades in Korthia, those are really meant for the players who are not going to be doing a lot of raiding, PvP, and Mythic Plus. For raiders then, of course, be sure to kill the last 2 bosses of the raid as soon as is possible. Doing so unlocks their higher item level loot in the Great Vault. For Mythic Plus then, target best in slot items from specific dungeons, unless you're helping others, of course. You will want to stack armor types or specs to maximize gear trading potential as well. You'll want to do, obviously, the highest difficulty that you can. Remember, the cap and valor means the efficient way to gear is to start from the highest possible point for upgrades, and also failing a higher key is more rewarding than timing a lower key. So it's all about the great push. All Mythic Plus runs are worth valor, with a bonus for players who get a Mythic score increase for completing it, which means help your friends out, the game will reward you. Don't spend valor until you're using it on an item that you want to keep for the entire patch. That's our Mythic ones. PvP then. Number 1, take advantage of early season hype to climb rating. Once boosting starts later on, it'll be much harder to climb. Keep any versatility gear from PvE content until you can replace it in PvP. Legendaries then. Install the World of Warcraft companion app on your phone to do the adventure table when you're not at your computer. Then, double check which slot to make your legendary items on. Check against the domination slots and any gear with effects in order to avoid overlap there. For the Great Vault, Domination Gear can drop from the vault, so be on the lookout for that. If you want a piece of gear from your vault, but you'll clear that boss later, hold on until after to, of course, avoid getting dupes, right? You don't want to get something from the Great Vault, then kill a boss, and then get the same item again. That'll feel a bit shitty, won't it? Then prioritize dungeon items that are BIS so that you can upgrade them later. It's harder to get specific items than it is item level upgrades. Remember that Raidbot's top gear supports the Great Vault choices now, and it's a very, very handy tool, one that I used a lot in the last patch. That's it. Do lots of content, get lots of gear. This is very complex in certain situations, I will admit, but it all does come together. It's like it's so many systems and catch up the lower levels, but, you know, after around the normal raid level, you do get funneled into just doing more difficult content for better gear, which is how it should be. The only real complexity here comes from having a bunch of weeklies to do in Korthia. Beyond that, though, I hope this video helps you out with what you maybe feel like you need to do. Of course, keep your eyes peeled on our channel for more guides this week on catch-up and alts, a detailed rundown of Korthia itself, and quite a few more things. I hope you enjoyed the video. Good luck in patch 9.1 to you and your team. I'll see you next time.